Final response to this question falls to Mr. Bates.
Ma'am, I couldn't wait to answer your question because I believe you deserve an answer. You mentioned the Great Depression, and the answer you're not going to get from me is, yes, I'll stand firm, yes, I'll make tough decisions. That to me is not a good answer. First of all, we cannot afford another Great Depression. Think back to the Great Depression. What did it give us? It gave us the largest expansion of the federal government that made more people slaves to the federal government. And that's exactly what Barack Obama wants. He wants more people to be dependent on the federal government. He thinks he's the next Roosevelt, and we can't let him do that. So what we have to do is rejuvenate this economy with free market principles and get it back on its feet and give more people, more power back to the people. Now I want to talk about GM. What should have happened is a federal judge, and this is one of my greatest disappointments with the Bush administration, to hand this off to the Obama administration because they knew what Obama was going to do. Gave a third of that ownership to the unions. What should have happened is General Motors should have been allowed to go into bankruptcy like any other company. A federal judge would have ripped up those contracts, handed them to the union and to General Motors and said, go back to the drawing board and figure this out. And how is it that we picked and chose who we were going to bail out and who not? Why is it that we bailed out Lehman Brothers and we allowed Bear Stearns to go bankrupt? It makes absolutely no sense. It should have never happened. But no, we cannot afford another Great Depression. Will we make tough decisions when it comes to spending? We absolutely have to. But we also have to rejuvenate the economy. Or if we do fall into a Great Depression, all that will do is put more people at the mercy of the federal government. And I don't want more people to be at the mercy of Barack Obama. I want less people.
Thank you. In moving on, and in fairness, I need to make a slight switch here, and I'm going to do that because ICE is gone and I'm in control now. And I'm going to tell our timer we're going to go from 2-minute responses to 1-minute responses, just in fairness because we've got 5 more people. I want to get them in, and we have 2-minute closing remarks over to this lady right here.
Okay, I was going to give you a softball question, but nah. I really want to ask something that I'm really interested in, and that has to do with states' rights. But we were talking earlier, and I'm glad that some of you recognize that we were designed to be a republic. I mean, God created the people created the state, and the states created the federal government. Now, I know they're trying to turn that upside down. We'd like to get it righted again.
Your specific question.
The question is, how do any of you foresee trying to correct that problem? What would you do in regard to nullification? For instance, regarding the health care bill. Instead of repealing this and recognizing the federal government has the power to check itself, how about the states just standing up and saying, not in our state?
Okay, so we put that question first. Mr. Hostad, we'll start in the third seat, and we'll move around. Sir?
The state has the authority to do that in several programs already in place. And I would be willing to entertain that. Ultimately, it's going to take a change in Washington, D.C., given the supremacy clause of the United States Constitution and the fact that the executive that has been chosen will enforce the law that he signed, the statute that he signed into law. And so it's going to take a change in personnel in Washington in order to ultimately do that. And the states have the authority to not take part in programs today that they voluntarily take part in and that consume much of their budget. So I'm in favor of changing personnel in Washington, D.C., but practically speaking, without repeal of the legislation, you have an executive who has the authority and the capacity to enforce the law that a Democrat-controlled Congress and he put into law.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stutzman.
I would support it. I believe that here in Indiana, I co-authored a bill this past session. We couldn't pass it because the health care bill had not passed. That would have exempted Indiana from the mandate of the health care bill. I believe that we should repeal it at the federal level. I think that we should have the constitutional parameters reminded again to our federal government that it is not their responsibility to be dealing with health care. Sitting in the Pensions and Labor Committee at the State Senate, we were dealing with an immigration bill because our federal government fails to deal with immigration. While our federal government was dealing with health care. We have the roles reversed. And again, until we change the people in Washington that understand the role of the federal government compared to the state government, compared to the local government. We're going to continue to have an overreaching federal government that's going to continue to take and abuse the power that they have.
Mr. Bates.
Well, thankfully, states have started this process. That's why 18 states have filed lawsuit. They have claimed their right to sue regarding the health care bill. Now, what we have to do, though, as legislators, is pass legislation that gives more power back to the states. Let me tell you where we start. We start with the Department of Education. That should be a states' rights issue, not a federal issue. So I believe any of these men recognize that. What we have to see, though, is will you elect enough strong conservatives who will face those issues, and once they get to Washington will lead with courage and conviction. We've heard the rhetoric before. We've seen the contract with America. We saw what conservatives were supposed to do. And in too many respects, we didn't get it done. And again, I say to you, the American people is going to give us one more chance. We dare not squander this opportunity.
As we finish this question, our next questioner will be the gentleman there in the middle, in the Brentford. I know. And Mr. Bates, you'll finish, and then we'll be ready for this gentleman here.
And we have this thing called the Constitution. We already have it. We already have the 10th Amendment. You know, our founders, fought a fight to provide us with freedoms. They already told one government that we are free people. They chose to be free. They knew that they were free. We have to ask ourselves, do we know that we are free? I know that I'm a free man. I'm going to be a free man or a dead man. Now this bill, this legislation has been shoved down our throats, takes away our individual liberties. I believe that our state, it's good that we're going to do all these things, and we'll work at these kinds of things, but I believe as a state we should stand up and claim our 10th Amendment rights and say we reject it, we nullify it, period. But we must determine among ourselves, are we free? Are you free? Are you free, or are we just going to talk about it? You either understand what I'm talking about or you don't. I get it. I'm asking you to send me there to fight, not to talk.
Thank you, sir. And for our next question, we go to this gentleman here in the middle. Yes, sir. To whom is your question addressed?
Well, I'd like to ask Hostadler, because I've had a chance.
Mr. Hostadler, okay, your question, sir.
Sorry about that. What I'd like to know is I can find reasons not to vote for your opponents, but I'd like to know specifically what's the one reason that I should vote for you.
The one reason...
One reason you should vote for Mr. Hostadler? Okay.
Well, if you are conservative, then you will appreciate a conservative voting record. A voting record on fiscal issues, social issues, national defense policy, foreign policy. A record that was established sometimes in concert with the Republican majority of Congress, sometimes without agreement of a Republican majority of Congress or a Republican president. But the principles were still the same. Limited government, adherence to constitutional principles in order to bring us back under the government that the founders of the country established. That is why I would suggest that you vote for me, because I've been there and I've done that. And I want to take this same philosophy to the United States Senate, where one person can have a much bigger impact than I even did in the United States House of Representatives.
Sir, one reason to vote for Marlon Stutzman.
Well, I would say my conservative record. I have a proven record. It is one thing to say and talk the conservative talk, but it is another thing to be in those caucus meetings, to be in those situations when you are put under pressure to vote.